I got to go to my step-cousin. He's not really my step-cousin, so Twitter people settle down. But you'll know why I say that. Let me go to the one and only Zac Jackson, formerly of ClevelandBrowns.com, now works for FoxSportsOhio.com. Does a wonderful job not only covering the Buckeyes, covering the Bengals, covering the Browns, but he's done a wonderful job covering the Akron Zips and some MAC basketball this year. Some great stories up on Fox Sports Ohio, kind of about the journey that OU as well as Akron have made to the point of tomorrow evening, where maybe the biggest MAC basketball game we've had in about 5 years will happen as one team comes in undefeated in MAC play, as Akron is 12-0. As I just said earlier, Ohio University comes in 11-1 in MAC play. And there's already, you know how this game has become big, Zach? There was trash talk online on Saturday night after Ohio U lost to Belmont. That tells me this is a real-time big game.
Well, that was a pretty good introduction, Andre, both for me and for these teams. It probably brought a tear to Michael Regai's eye wherever he is right now because it is big. I mean, MAC basketball has been down, let's face it, and part of it, comparatively, is that the other teams aren't as good as Akron and as OU. And OU's not as good as Akron right now. And for the first time in 5 years, a team is ranked. Akron is 24th in the country. If you ask me, that's about right. I wouldn't necessarily vote them in the top 25 if I had a vote, but I'd come close. They've won 18 games in a row, and when the shots fall, they're pretty complete. And they're going to run into a really loud, fired-up crowd here tomorrow on a team that can beat them and wants desperately to beat them, and it's fun. It's the attention makes it better. There's a real buzz. I've been here a couple of hours, and there's a real buzz here for this game.
It should be a big buzz. And you look at Ohio University, they get to the Sweet 16 last year, Zach, and as you said, the MAC's been down, and they made a great run. I think a lot of people didn't even see them beating Akron last year in the tournament to go into the tournament. They beat North Carolina, and they had a great game, and DJ Cooper kind of became a name that the whole country knew, and he still is, and I know he's a guy that you wrote a story about a couple weeks ago. This game, with him and Abreu going against each other, Abreu's not talked about like DJ Cooper, but he's made enough plays this year, and he really is the engine that makes Akron go. We can talk about the big guys, and we can talk about everything else. These 2 point guards are going to be extremely big tomorrow night.
Yeah, when you have a DJ Cooper, you have a shot against anybody, and that's been proven over 4 years. I mean, twice or 3 times, but in 2 different years, OU has won tournament games because of DJ's heroics. It takes a lot else. And you're right, Alex is underrated. He's often overlooked. He hasn't been super consistent. In the first game when they ran away from OU, Alex showed up, and he likes the big stage. He knows the challenges there. He knows that everybody knows DJ Cooper. And when you look at Akron, you think about Zeke Marshall first, the guy, the 7-footer on the billboards, and then you look at Harney and Treadwell and some of the other guys, and Alex is still an underclassman. Technically he's a junior. But you're right. When he's playing well, that gives Akron a chance to be complete. They feed the post. They get out in tempo. I mean, they're unique, Andre, because they're big, but they can play fast. And so they get you going, and style points be damned. They beat you to the glass. They get some ugly ones, and they turn those into dunks and wide-open threes and speed it up. And OU can always play fast with DJ and with Offit and Kellogg, who can shoot it. They might have to because they're going to get beat on the glass over the course of the game by Akron and by a lot of teams. That's kind of borne itself out. So when they're not playing well defensively, sometimes they have to go to track meet mode, and those threes have to drop. And anybody who's seen DJ in action knows, especially the later in the game it gets, the more his range gets and the more accurate he becomes on some of those wild 25-footers, he can knock them in.
Yeah, Zach, I was watching and I was texting and tweeting back and forth Friday night. I was trying to be a father, and hopefully I didn't talk my daughter into becoming an Akron U fan. I guess I got no choice since her grandparents went to school there. But watching that Bracket Busters game the other night, Friday night with Akron, and they're obviously the win streak. And then you wrote a great story about Keith Dambrot and him and having it, and he's almost like a little kid with when he'll get his hair cut, what he'll wear on the sidelines. I know he won't be wearing a sports coat tomorrow night after reading your story. Great story about why he won't wear a sports coat. But you look at it, and Akron's getting all this love because of the win streak, and they deserve it. But you watch how they play, and I thought you mentioned something that's very important. We can talk about Zeke Marshall, and Zeke's having a great season. They put up a stat on the game Friday night that he's putting up numbers that only like 4 guys have ever put up, and they all went on the league to be successful. And one of those guys is named Hakeem Olajuwon when it comes to his blocks, his points, and his field goal percentage and all that other stuff. But I thought it was interesting that Keith Dambrot on Friday turned up the tempo against North Dakota State. We all think that they're this plodding, slow team, and I thought Demetrius Treadwell, he imposed his will on that team. I guess what I'm saying is I think Akron's tempo is a little bit slower, especially for a game like tomorrow night, but they showed Friday night they can turn it up a little bit and full court press you and get the ball out of your point guard's hands if it's not a DJ Cooper.
Right. I think what Keith's philosophy is that they really aren't as good a half-court defensive team as some of the prior teams that he's had, but they are as talented overall. And so he feels like he gets better effort consistently and better chance of creating some turnovers by going to that full court pressure and using that depth. I mean, they still miss Quincy Diggs. There's no question about it. And other guys have really not been consistent. Part of that has been Brian Walsh has been hurt, but the two freshmen, Kretzer and McAdams, have stepped up and hit big shots. Like I said, Alex has probably only had his A game for a portion of the season, but his A game is pretty darn good. And when you have a unique player in Zeke who frankly should be dominating and does most of the time now that he's a senior, and you pair him with Treadwell, who is a little like Charles Barkley, and I'm not going to say, and a little like Ben Wallace, and I'm not going to say he's going to play in the NBA because he certainly probably will not. But, I mean, that is the type of rebounder and the type of aggressive guy taking at you that he is. And to me, that's Ohio's biggest problem, is trying to match his strength, physicality, and athleticism. Because, it's a different game, it's a different wide-open game, and Hurney and Treadwell both give Akron options,
right.
On how to do things. And you know what? Why this is so intriguing, Andre? When you get in a situation like Akron is here, and are they the 24th best team in the country? I don't know. Probably not. They might be. They've earned it here. And that turns up the intensity and the spotlight. And teams traditionally, for mid-major conferences, get here and they lose as soon as they're ranked. But they know that they're ranked now, and one loss, and they'll never be ranked again.
Yep.
And frankly, one loss or two losses from here on out, whenever they come, and they have almost zero chance of being an at-large team in the NCAA. And you go all the way back, the last team to run through a MAC season without a loss, Wayne Embry at Miami of Ohio in the late 50s.
Wow, at Miami of Ohio, that's a stat for you. Now, Zach, I was going to ask you, because you and Nick Camino and a couple other guys had a great talk about 2-3 weeks ago about how many teams would get in from the MAC. And we all laughed because Akron's RPI wasn't that high at the time. And the last time a MAC team, I hope I'm correct with this, the last time a MAC team was ranked in the top 25, it was Kent State, and I think their coach was Jim Christian, and then they lost the next game.
You're right. Jim Christian was the coach who's now at OU, and they lost the very next game.
And never got
at
back
Bowling Green, and they never got back. The stat that Akron would prefer to concentrate on is the last one undefeated team, none in the modern era of the MAC.
Wow.
Two teams in that modern era, which the MAC considers 1975 when it expanded to, I believe, 9 teams. Two teams have gone through the year with just one conference loss, and those two teams have won at least one tournament game, and the last time was Kent in 2002 when they got all the way to the Elite Eight.
Wow.
So, when you look at Keith Dambrot, where he's brought this program and the level of players that he has, I see these Atlantic 10 teams and these Big 10 teams all year long. And with the exception of Michigan and Indiana, and in Michigan State, Akron looks like everybody else when they come out of that tunnel. And they have those guys. And the only way that they're really going to get notice with the casual basketball fan is to do what Butler, Davidson, Gonzaga have done and win in March. And I think that's what's so exciting, regardless of what happens tomorrow or in the next couple of weeks, is they're starting to create that buzz before that, and people are starting to pay attention and not just saying, well, Keith, that's the short guy from the movie who was LeBron's coach.
Right. Well, the other thing about Keith, and you wrote a great story last week prior to the game on Friday night, and I talk about Keith and some of the little, baseball type things that he has. I was surprised you didn't write that he won't step on the lines when he walks out in the court. But obviously Keith has had some history in the MAC, and it's been an unbelievable story what he's bounced back from. And I loved in your story that you talked about how Keith is willing to talk about the problem that he had back years ago when as you put in the story, the kids he's recruiting today weren't even alive when he made the mistake that he made, and how he doesn't run from it. And I think that tells a lot to these kids and why they play so hard for him.
Yeah, I totally agree that the success of this program has been built on a lot of things, and great players has been it, and the LeBron Nike affiliation has been part of it. But I think it's been an honesty. It's been a thing of, okay, your kid has a chance to excel here. Your kid is an Akron player, a MAC player because of this, and we are going to give him advantages here. They lose a lot of kids who think they have to play in the A-10 or the Big East, Andre. And frankly, they lose a lot of kids who go to schools that have better academic reputations. But he has done things the right way. They have avoided major problems. Not a lot of JUCOs, not a lot of transfers. He took a chance on Hurney and Tread a couple of years ago, and boy, is that paying off, because they've both kept it between the lines off the court for the most part and on the court. Like I said, if it wasn't for Zeke, I think Demetrius Treadwell would be the MAC, and DJ Cooper would be the MAC player of the year.
Quick question. I got to wrap it up. I want to talk football with you, but you know how these things go. It's Bruce's show, and you got to get back to Goodyear and talk to him. Do you think at this point in time that Akron has to win the MAC tournament? Do you think two teams from the MAC can get in? Or does Akron have to win out in the regular season and maybe OU beats them in the championship is the only way two teams get in?
Okay, if Akron wins out in the regular season and loses the MAC championship game, they are slightly on the right side of the bubble. They're still sweating. If they lose tomorrow or lose Saturday and then lose again, and you're talking about an at-large situation, then they might be on the wrong side of the bubble. But there's a lot of numbers and a lot of other results that still have to come in, and two of those losses came without Hurney and Tread. And Keith is just kind of praying that that doesn't have to come to the selection committee deciding what might have happened in those losses.
Yeah, I agree with you. Combine wrapping up today in Indianapolis. You and I did a great podcast. It'll be up on Fox Sports Ohio soon, we think. You were big on Ziggy Ansah. Has anything changed over the weekend that makes you think? Because I see after Milner ran today, I think he'll be gone by number the 5th pick. Jarvis Jones, who I think is the 6th pick in the draft, ends up getting his medical stuff pretty good. Anything jump out to you? And I know Tyrann Mathieu, who you did a great story on when he was in the Senior Bowl, ran a 4.4 today. And Matt Elam, another guy that we've talked about, all had really good days. Just some of your words quickly on some of the things that went down with the Combine this weekend.
The Browns can forget about Matt Elam because he's going to go between 20 and 30, and they're not there. And, I think on their list, I'll tell you that Jarvis Jones is the guy I know the least about. I think Browns fans should be pleased with either Ansah or Deion Jordan, and we'll see medically how they both check out, especially Jordan because he's going to go for surgery. And you're right. I mean, D. Milner, he's not a guy I know a ton about. There have been some questions about him, but when he runs like that and the way teams need corners, and you look at who's picking at 3, 4, and 5, it wouldn't be an upset to see you there. So I'm going to keep driving that Ziggy Ansah train at 6, and then we'll revisit that maybe in a month or so.
Hey, great stuff, man. Hopefully we can talk to you maybe Thursday night. Thursday I'm back on. Maybe we'll talk to you about what happens tomorrow down in Athens. Great game. Take care of yourself. Be safe. And good stuff. Always good talking to you, Zach.
Yeah, I'm telling you, watch this. For everybody out there, watch this game. It'll be worth your time.
Absolutely. Good stuff, Zach. Live from Athens. That's Zac Jackson from Fox Sports Ohio. We'll take a quick break.